Welcome to the podcast today. Recently, I was reading some things that Nikola Tesla had said, and it made me think to myself, well, hold up there. I thought I understood Tesla. And then I decided to read everything that Tesla has ever written to see what his philosophy really was. And it has shocked me. So I had to write an article. The article basically started off as Nikola Tesla versus Rudolf Steiner, or basically atheistic science versus spiritual science. Because what you're dealing with here, once I had reread everything to make sure that I wasn't mistaken, and I haven't really spoken publicly about Nikola Tesla much, I'm going to say emphatically that he was demon possessed, and that the inventions that come up that are part of the fivefold structure that he called his world system basically has come to pass. And so he is the father of modern technology. And for a long time, people felt, they didn't know him at all. And then they felt very sorry for him. Do not feel sorry for this man. I have now read everything that he has written, and I have actually seen other patents besides the ones that are included in the collected works that you'll find, anywhere out there on Amazon. And I've read through all of those, of course, in the past and used some of them for a few inventions that that I participated in. And I can tell you that essentially you're working with a madman. You're working with a person who said, for some, they call it God. For others, they call it physics. So he is a materialist, one of the worst of materialists. But he was also, as people generally do know, a very, very peculiar person. But when you study what he says in his pseudo autobiography called My Inventions and other works that he has written, which have autobiographical remarks in them, if you take only his words, which I recently did put in an article, and basically described who I believe he is and the dangers of Teslaism, and put some quotes of Rudolf Steiner pointing out what electricity really is and what electricity is in terms of beings, and then used his own words, Tesla's own words, to then describe for you his world philosophy. Now, this world philosophy, I would have to say, is the worst form of materialism that I've ever encountered. You and I know that every once in a while you'll see these couple beautiful quotes of Nikola Tesla on Facebook or online, where he says something that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, look in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency, something to that effect. It's in the article I've written here. And what does that mean? It means everything's material for him. He didn't say look in terms of angels or archangels or God or intelligent design, nothing. But on the other hand, because he considered himself a Buddhist, you'll hear him now and then make reference to the luminiferous ether or to the ethers or to such things as the following. He says that modern science would be shocked to find out what electricity truly is. In other places, he says scientists have no idea what electricity is. And remember, he's the person who helped change direct current, which was very limited and had to be near its source, to alternating current, which could then be spread all over the world in a spiderwork network, spiderwork web of pseudo intelligence. Rudolf Steiner, in the quotes that I've given you, in one of the quotes, he states that electricity, and particularly wireless and telegraphy, will eventually lead to human beings being presented with so much information through those devices that they will no longer know how to think. And this is what I have put forth in numerous articles, describe which you can find in Neo-Anthroposophy and through our other sites, which you can find, and in some of the books that we've done. You will find that, in fact, electricity, described by Rudolf Steiner, is light that is decaying into death. In other words, all of our electrical lines hold the death of light. Now, light in its suffering and deeds, Goethe says, and he says, create the color rainbow, or basically they color our world. All color in the world is because of light falling into this world. But if light falls into a magnetic field and then is put into copper or aluminum wires, and then extended all over the earth so that we then have this illusion of the power of electricity, don't you think it would be good to have a philosophy of what it is that we have just allowed to take over our entire modern world? Our entire modern world is based upon Tesla. And I'm going to demonstrate this because of a system that he created called the world system. And when you hear this, you're going to say to yourself, wait a second, that is the same thing that we call now the Internet of Things plus the Internet of the body or bodies, our human bodies. Correct. He predicted all that is happening and more and gave to what, and he all the time is talking about not peace, but war. And the way that, yes, his inventions will lead to more war and bigger war, but he hopes that eventually they will lead to robotic wars or wireless, what he calls automatonic wars, and that will then end all wars. Of course, that's complete nonsense. You don't satiate a desire. That's ridiculous. Anyone should know that. But he was a child in his mind. And he, as far as I can tell, by looking at all of his autobiographical remarks, just from analyzing those without looking at all that biographers have done in terms of describing his life and what other people thought of him, which I've also studied for a long time, but I never really understood that he believed that the world is just a machine and that humans are machines. He actually calls himself an automaton. In other words, a robot. And he says there's no such thing as a thought that's ever arisen in his mind that didn't come from a direct perception of the world. In other words, all of his inspirations, which he formulated in his mind as pictures that he believed that were as real as if he had made them out of the substance that he was picturing in his mind. And he said he could work on them, he could smell them, he could see their wear marks, he could see all aspects of them as if they were literally physically already brought into existence, all in his mind. And he spent, mind you, his whole life in that magical world of his. And that's psychologically not a nice thing to say about someone, but he lived in a magical world. And that magical world had nothing to do with reality, because look at his inventions, whether it be electricity that is turned into our digital world, whether it be his wireless, which is turned into all broadcasting, every type of broadcasting, whether it be what he calls the art of individualization, which of course is all of our cryptography, our public key infrastructure, or the Federal Bridge Authority. All of these things, he already predicted all of them. And then he also predicted that he would, through the fifth element of what he calls his world system, 5 elements of his world system, that's all we need. And then he can control every human being and everything on the earth, anything that has any energy. The last one, of course, is the Tesla terrestrial standing wave. Now, if I were to describe that, you would really be shocked, because what that does is it breaks apart the gravity of the Earth. Yeah, that's all. And which would, of course, then change probably our relationship with the moon. And Rudolf Steiner said that when this ultimate force beyond electricity and electromagnetism would come, which is the third force, he said that mankind would be able to move the planets. Well, that's exactly what the fifth point of Nikola Tesla's world system is all about. These standing waves, they've been used by Russia, and they've been used by China to try to push back the weather in the northern aspects of their country, particularly Russia. And then they started this disaster that the tundra started to melt, and they started to have gigantic sinkholes and all this fantastic problems because they were using Tesla's standing wave. The standing wave is kind of like remember, each of these 5 things that he talks about, transducers, which is really electro changing from DC to AC, magnifying transmitters, the wireless system, the art of individualization, and terrestrial standing waves. These 5 things, the inventions that arise out of them, are our modern world. The modern world that enslaves us, a modern world that Rudolf Steiner says this electrifying and this wireless principle would create so much data, so much information, that the human being would not be able to handle it, they would be overwhelmed and they would lose the capacity for clear thinking. Is that not a description of our modern world created by our digital devices? We have written articles, which are in Neo-Anthroposophy, that you can go and read about the illnesses that are created by these devices. As a matter of fact, if you line up the distribution and the timing of 5G with the people who were the most affected by COVID, with confirmed cases of COVID, you'll find that they are incidental. Now, that's true also because they are in the larger cities, and that's where supposedly the transmissibility of these supposed viruses are supposed to happen. But the point is that